ENHYPEN's island begins with a lie. The applicants are told it's an opportunity for them, but within hours, trainees are voting each other out and learning how disposable they really are. And from that moment on, every bond, every decision, and every performance is shaped around the fear of being eliminated next. And later, only 7 will be allowed to survive. This is the brutal story of how ENHYPEN was formed. All of the participants arrive at the island in units of people. This is when we're introduced to a few of them more closely. One of the first people we meet is Jake, an Australian trainee who only recently started idol training. He's driven by a genuine love for K-pop and a desire to share that feeling with others. Several applicants have been inspired by BTS. For Sunghoon, it was seeing them live that changed everything. He was already a successful figure skater, however, he chose to leave that career behind to chase the feeling he had watching them on stage. We also meet Heesung. He's one of the most technically prepared trainees, given that he's trained for over 3 years. He feels desperate entering I-LAND, feeling like this may be his only realistic path to debut. So many of the applicants think the exact same way. They're ready to put everything they have into this. They don't want debut, they need it. They each enter the stage and take a seat, surrounded by a mixture of familiar and unfamiliar faces. They're excited to see so many people, specifically 23, but soon realize that only 12 people can progress to the island. This is when their first mission is revealed: perform for each other and vote for the 12 who deserve to enter I-LAND. It's immediately clear how nerve-wracking this system is. Popularity, first impressions, and peer pressure influence most of how you vote, and the applicants recognize that quickly. Some of them begin rushing to be the first to perform, hoping that they can secure their votes before people hesitate. Seon is the first to perform. He's incredibly focused on debut and understands that in I-LAND, everyone around him is both a friend and a competitor. Following his performance, all 22 of the other applicants vote for him. Early in the performances, people tend to vote as much as they can. They worry that if they don't vote for someone, it could affect whether or not they receive votes later on. This fear is pretty easy to see in the quieter trainees as well. Jungwon, for example, performs and receives votes from everyone except one person. He's accepted into I-LAND, but his unit mates only receive 9 votes each. While he's relieved to pass, he feels guilty being the only one chosen from his team. As performances continue, some applicants are overwhelmed by the pressure before they even step on stage. Jake, who's waiting for his turn, is so nervous that he feels like his heart is going to explode. He eventually performs alongside Sunwoo and Youngbin, who he entered I-LAND with. Immediately after sitting back down, Jake thanks Sunghoon for voting for them. Even this early, he's aware of how important it is to form those relationships and just be nice to people in a system that's built on his peers' judgment. Jay receives 19 votes in his opening performance and is accepted into I-LAND. Jay is more of a simple driver to be an idol. Since he was just a child, he's wanted to be someone cool that can learn from other cool people. Nikki, who's been learning dance at his parents' dance studio since he was only 5, performs exceptionally well, receiving 20 votes and earning his place in I-LAND. When Taki arrived earlier, he was visibly nervous. However, he finds comfort in Nikki's presence. We get to see how the two of them already have a strong bond since the beginning. Because of that, Taki deeply wants to debut with him. When Taki performs alone, he receives 22 votes and also makes it into I-LAND with Nikki. Kay, who is also heavily inspired by BTS, performs alone and receives 16 votes, securing his place in I-LAND as well. If you want to see more videos about ENHYPEN, make sure to subscribe. I'm planning on making a lot more very soon, so you don't want to miss it. Now back to I-LAND. As the performances continue and spots begin to dwindle, people grow increasingly hesitant about voting for others. They begin stressing over whether there will be a spot left for them. Voting becomes slower and much heavier for them. Ultimately, they're forced to be a little selfish if they want to enter I-LAND. In the end, more than 12 people pass the initial test. A total of 16 applicants make it into I-LAND. As they walk through the space, they're immediately struck by how elaborate and polished it is. Everything is pristine, high-tech, and overwhelming. At the same time, they're constantly reminded that only 12 applicants are allowed to stay. There are 12 banners, 12 seats, 12 beds, and countless other visual reminders reinforcing that 4 of them don't belong there. The 16 islanders are tasked with eliminating 4 people and sending them to the ground. The system is essentially pushing them against each other from the very beginning, forcing them to adapt Seon's mindset from earlier. Even bonds formed just hours earlier are now tested. Nikki spends time with Taki while deciding who should be voted out. He believes Taki's performance was good, but worries he won't be able to keep up yet. Ultimately, Nikki chooses to vote Taki out, convincing himself that going to the ground to train more will be good for him, even though it means betraying someone he deeply cares about. Meanwhile, the other 7 applicants who failed the initial vote are automatically sent to the ground. They're not entirely out yet, they can still make it back, but it'll be very hard. All of the islanders frantically begin dancing in the living room, ranting and trying to prove their skills to one another. Later as they vote, each of them feels the weight of the decision, especially knowing how much impact it'll have. Eventually, the 12 islanders are decided, and 4 participants are sent to the ground. There's an immediate contrast between island and the ground. The ground is dark, industrial, and restrictive, while island is bright and open and more pleasing to look at. The applicants realize that being sent to the ground means being cut off from opportunities, possibly for the rest of the show. The grounders wear dark, uniform-like clothing that removes their individuality, while islanders can dress freely and are given bright, eye-catching outfits to wear. This is a deliberate choice made by the system. The island represents privilege and visibility, and the ground makes it clear how easily they can be forgotten.
이곳은 그라운드입니다.
이곳에 있는 한 데뷔기에는 없습니다.
야, 무서워 진짜로.
I am ground.
Soon after settling in, the islanders are given their first official mission. They're told they will perform an original song written specifically for Island. The idea excites them. The song isn't just a performance piece, it's about them, about their situation, and about the place they're trying to stay in. However, the excitement quickly turns competitive once they realize how much visibility certain parts have. As they discuss who should take the different parts, Jay is especially determined to get part 1 of Into the Island, believing the high notes are where the trainees can stand out. However, when he tries to prove himself, he struggles. He then pushes for part 2, but once again fails to convince the group and receives no votes. Refusing to be pushed aside though, Jay asks for any part under 5 and keeps trying, but nothing lands. He gets frustrated and stuck in his own head, leading him to miss the moment when the group moves on to part 7. When he finally gets a chance to try, he still isn't chosen. At that point, he gives up, saying he'll take whatever part is left. He calls it the most humiliating moment of his 3 years as a trainee. Still, he tries one last time for part 8, and this time, it works. When the group approves him, he's immediately relieved, barely being able to hide his excitement. Heesung, who was recommended for part 1 instead, takes up the part even though he's worried he's not a great fit for it. Additionally, he takes on a leadership role during practice, teaching choreography and guiding the group. At one point, he changes part of the choreography, which causes some concerns among the others. These doubts about Heesung's leadership style continue to grow. Some islanders feel his approach isn't effective and decide to speak with him directly. Heesung admits that, from the beginning, he predicted he shouldn't be the center and believes it would be better if he isn't. Around the same time, Kei brings up that Nikki originally wanted to be the center. With that in mind, and after Heesung gives up the position, everyone agrees to move part 1 to Nikki instead. Heesung switches to part 10. Afterward, he grows incredibly quiet, isolating himself as he continues to practice alone. For Nikki, getting part 1 feels like a chance to prove himself. He wanted to be at the center of the performance so he could show off his dance skills. Thanks to his strong background in dance, he's able to quickly memorize the choreography. While the islanders practice, the grounders are also instructed to prepare. They're told that the producers may choose grounders to fill in for islanders who are eliminated. Even without a guaranteed opportunity to perform, they practice anyway, and despite the uncertainty, they try to stay upbeat, laughing and encouraging one another through rehearsals. The tension continues to rise on the ground during daily evaluations. When J-Bomb forgets the lyrics on camera, the pressure becomes overwhelming for him. He breaks down immediately afterward, crying openly. Hanbin comforts him first, and soon the rest of the grounders gather around, trying to reassure him even as they wrestle with the same fears themselves. He's stressed about how long they're going to need to keep at it in Island, how long they'll have to push themselves like never before, how long until they achieve their dreams. Back in the island, the pressure never truly eases. To cope, the islanders try to keep morale high by turning practice into something playful. They hold a dance battle, cheering loudly for one another. But when they begin checking everyone's choreography individually, the mood shifts again. Each person performs alone, while the others watch, evaluate, and give feedback. For some, it's constructive. For others, it's humiliating. Youngbin struggles during his individual check, and clearly feels exposed and embarrassed by the process. The Islanders are later called in to meet with producer Rain, who evaluates their progress and current skill levels. He keeps the session fast-paced and demanding, pushing them continuously with little time to rest. There's a clear expectation here. They must rise to the standard quickly or fall behind just as fast. It reflects the reality of the K-pop industry. Nicki excels as a dancer really well. However, vocally, he struggles. During the midpoint evaluation, nerves get the best of him and he forgets the lyrics, with Rain also pointing out that his pitch needs work. The Islanders even consider reallocating his part to Heesung, but despite the concerns, Nicki keeps part 1, deciding to perform as though it's his last chance. The first evaluation for the Islanders will be decided by the producers, based on what they believe the required standard for debut should be. As rehearsals continue, Seon reminds everyone that even a single mistake could end their time in the island. If they want to avoid anyone being eliminated, they need to score incredibly high as a team. The average of each applicant's score will determine how many people are forced out. As the Islanders begin their performance, the tension is overwhelming. Everyone is aware that this could be their last stage, just as Seon warned. From the ground, the eliminated trainees watch with visible envy. They want to be on the stage too. They want the chance to perform, not just practice endlessly in the background. For them, the island feels distant, but never quite out of their mind. When the evaluations approach, the Islanders brace themselves. Many of them expect decent results, believing their hard work will be reflected in their scores. Instead, the results come back far harsher than they had anticipated. The scores are significantly lower, immediately shaking their confidence. The reality sets in fast for them. Regardless of their effort or intention, 6 people must leave. Jungwon is revealed to have the highest score from this performance, earning 75 points. The Islanders are told they must vote again. The system continues to put them against each other in an attempt of weeding out the least skillful. The number alone hits hard. 6 is more than before, and the weight of that decision is immediately visible on their faces. In the ground, emotions are conflicted. There's a relief knowing that 6 spots will open up, giving more people a chance to return to the island, but at the same time, no one really celebrates. Everyone understands that those opportunities came at the expense of others. When the eliminated Islanders arrive at the ground, their emotions spill over. Jay is among them, transferred down after the Into the Island performance. He says he'll come back like nothing happened, and that island better be prepared. Jake is eliminated as well, voted out following his troubling performance. Even as he leaves, he insists he isn't done yet, saying he wants to see them again in Island. Nicki is also eliminated and sent to the ground. He believes the others voted him out because of his poor performance as part 1, blaming himself for dragging the team's score down. When he reunites with Taki, Taki is confused, genuinely believing Nicki did well. The grounders don't quite know how to welcome them. There's hesitation and awkwardness and guilt mixed with sympathy. These aren't strangers, they're people who were living a completely different reality just moments ago. Back in the island, the remaining members are shaken. Losing people they trained with and bonded with leaves their space feeling empty. The producer selects 6 grounders to move to Island. Sunu is one of them, returning back there. Previously, he was accepted into Island. However, given that it was too full, he was voted out. It's incredibly emotional for him. As he steps back inside, he's overwhelmed by how surreal it feels to be back there again. Taki is also selected to return, leaving Nicki behind in the ground. The moment is bittersweet. While Taki moves forward, he's painfully aware that he's leaving his closest friend behind. Despite the grief still lingering on them, the returning members are greeted warmly. There's smiles and hugs and encouragement filling the space. The second test is revealed after this time focusing heavily on teamwork. Individual visibility alone won't be enough. The stakes rise further when they're told the highest score will receive an elimination exemption card. For the first time, personal safety is directly tied to performance. They're also given only 6 days to prepare. As the parts are discussed, Daniel, Jay, and Jake all express interest in part 1. Jake hesitates, unsure if he can handle the attached dance break. Daniel ultimately gives up the part, leaving Jay as the center by default. In I-LAND, former grounders hesitate to step forward. Now inside, they feel pressure not to overstep on them. The original Islanders move confidently, refining their details and syncing quickly, while the newer members are struggling to keep up with the pace and expectations. In the ground, Jay takes on a leadership role. He's drawing from what he observed in I-LAND, and he tries to avoid flawed leadership and pushes the grounders harder. Even when exhaustion shows, he urges them to keep going, believing time is their biggest enemy right now. There isn't enough time to take long breaks. Nikki thinks similarly to Jay. As everyone is practicing, he quickly grows frustrated. He doesn't understand why the existing grounders don't feel the same pressure the former Islanders do. He feels like the grounders aren't taking it as seriously as the Islanders were. Jake agrees with him, and when the tension rises in the ground, Nikki has to briefly step away, later speaking with Jay privately. Before the midpoint evaluation, Jay approaches Rain and Dubu to tell them they haven't practiced the elevated move at all. Rain criticizes this decision, pointing out that they're already short on time and can't afford to put off difficult sections. And as the leader, Jay realizes that choosing to avoid such a move reflects back on him. Rain and Dubu then step in directly, having to guide the grounders through the elevated section themselves and making them practice it properly. Their guidance here is very strict. There's little room for encouragement. Back at I-LAND, a different panel of producers arrives. Zico, Son Sung-duk, and P-Dog observe the performance closely. Sung-duk bluntly describes it as the worst of the worst, criticizing the group for failing to show teamwork. Zico responds by explaining that the individual perfection can still contribute to a strong group result. Despite the difference in approach, the feedback makes it clear that they need to improve. Hee-sung takes the criticism seriously. After the evaluation, he reflects on the performance and later brings the group together, explaining that they need to come together more as a team rather than focusing individually. Once the performance arrives, they try their best to give it their all after they've practiced for so long. This time around, their scores are significantly higher than before, averaging around 78 points. There's visible relief on their faces, but it's short-lived when they're told that 4 people still have to be eliminated. The grounders are now given a chance to perform. Their performance is noticeably more intense. Rain points out the change in their energy, saying they came with fuel this time around. He comments that they performed so well that he wishes that the grounders could replace all the Islanders if that were possible. Following the teamwork battle, I-LAND is required to select more members to eliminate and send to the ground. K ranks first with 88 points, winning the exemption card. He mentions that if he were to use it on anyone, it'd be Taki. Over the past week, he and Taki have grown quite close, and he's taken a strong liking to him. He emphasizes that Taki honestly feels like a younger brother to him. Every time they get out of the shower, Taki tells him they should go practice. Having Taki around makes K feel inspired and driven to keep going. If he were to save anyone, it'd be Taki. Given that the top scores were publicly announced this time, Jungwon worries that because he wasn't included, he could become a target for elimination. Unfortunately, he was right. Jungwon's voted as the 4th person to be eliminated. However, we learned that K was willing to save other people than just Taki. K decides to use his exemption card to save Jungwon, explaining that he respects his skills and his mindset. However, Taki is revealed to have the 5th most votes and is automatically eliminated. K collapses, feeling guilty for Taki's outcome.
お前が選ばれたら絶対助けると思ってた。本当ごめん。そう思うとごめん。言った。
Taki understands that K didn't mean to eliminate him. He's driven to work harder and come back. As the grounders move into I-LAND to fill the empty spots, K embraces Jay, who returns to the island with Jake. The next test is revealed to be a direct battle between island and ground. This time, the two sides will face each other head-on. Each team must choose 2 vocal representatives and 3 dance representatives. The stakes are extremely high this time. If the ground wins, 6 islanders will be eliminated. If the island wins, no one will be sent down. Island begins to choose the representatives. Jungwon is recommended to represent them in dance. Sunghoon also wants to be a dance representative, but he doesn't want to step forward when Jungwon is suggested. He doesn't want to selfishly take that spot. However, he continues practicing on his own afterward, driven to be ready if needed. Heesung is recommended as a vocal representative and accepts the role. Gonu is confident he can handle the vocal battle as well. Once the representatives are decided, the remaining islanders do what they can to support them. They bring them snacks and check in and offer hugs whenever possible. Even the small gestures feel significant when so much rests on so few people. As preparations continue, Island meets with Rain for another midpoint evaluation. Rain reflects on Jae's growth specifically, acknowledging how much he's improved after being placed in a leadership position and forced to carry responsibility under pressure. At the same time, Rain notices something happening across the entire island. Even the members who weren't chosen as representatives are still practicing. They stay warmed up and ready, aware they may have to step in at any moment if something goes wrong. Rain openly praises this mindset, pointing out that this level of awareness and discipline is exactly what the system is meant to draw out. It isn't just about who is performing now, but who is prepared at all times. The midpoint evaluation then shifts into a closer look at the vocals. Rain focuses on Heesung and Gonu, pointing out how well they control their vocal strength. Rather than forcing power, they understand when to hold back and when to push, keeping the performance stable instead of being overwhelming. The preparations for the representative battle aren't going perfectly. Jae's consistently struggling with crucial spins he needs to be hitting in the dance performance. The other applicants begin to worry if he should even be a representative, given that their fate is in his hands as well. However, Jae feels like they're trying to get rid of him, leading him to focus hard to protect his part. And while the others could sense that he really wanted to keep his part, he continued to make several mistakes in the choreo. Sunghoon, who isn't currently a representative, seems to be getting the part down much better, thanks to his background in figure skating. The Islanders eventually decide that Sunghoon should take the part instead, being that letting Jae continue to represent them could be too much of a risk. Jae feels disappointed about losing the part, but he understands it's for the better of the group. Even though he lost the part he wanted so much, he continues to support Sunghoon, helping him with his new part as a dance representative and accelerating him to be ready. When the two groups finally come face to face, they don't even greet or acknowledge each other. They're so locked into the battle that even their basic interactions have disappeared. The competition has fully overtaken everything else. Bang Si-hyuk talks about more of the structure around the system. He explains that a battle like this is designed to motivate the grounders, pushing them to work harder and close the gap with the island. It isn't just about eliminating people, but about accelerating growth through pressure. We can see this very thing happening at ground. When Sunwoo was eliminated, he stayed determined. He felt like he had to come back even stronger than he was before. He feels incredibly committed to doing his best during the vocal battle. Sunwoo recognizes it as potentially being his very last chance to make it on island, so he wants to give it his earnest best. And as the battle draws closer, it becomes even more clear that both sides are being refined in different ways. The ground is being pushed to rise quickly, knowing that they may not get another chance. Meanwhile, the island is under pressure to prove they deserve to stay where they are. Then the performances begin. During the ground's performance, they perform with everything they have. It's easy to tell how desperate they are. The island follows. Their performances are more controlled, showing the results of consistent preparation. In the vocal stage, Heesung and Gonu demonstrate their strong control, matching well with the song. When the results are announced, Island wins both the dance and the vocal battles. Ground loses their chance to enter Island. It's not their last chance, but it certainly hurts to miss out again. The Islanders react much differently, celebrating their win with visible relief. Only after that initial moment do the representatives from both Island and Ground move toward each other and embrace. Despite the system dividing them, they're still connected by the same goal. When the Grounders return to their space, the mood shifts harshly. Their emotions spill over again as they comfort one another, trying to process how close they came. Nikki feels sorry that they couldn't give Ground an opportunity to go to the island, taking the loss personally. Back in the island, the atmosphere remains elevated. The members continue celebrating, but they also acknowledge how strong the ground's performance was. They recognize that the battle felt much closer than the results actually suggest. Later, the producers visit the ground directly. They do point out where they can still grow, but they prioritize encouraging them. They understand they've put in a lot of effort, but they also recognize that pure effort doesn't equal success here. Soon after, Test 4 is revealed. This will be the deciding round where the final 12 are selected. Island votes, producer votes, and global votes will all be combined to determine who stays. A second original island song, I Am Credible, is announced for the mission. With the stakes higher than ever, the Islanders isolate themselves to practice. Rather than leaning on group momentum, they focus heavily on their individual improvements. Any weakness they currently have could be a danger to them. It's something that could directly cost them their place. As the rehearsals intensify, Seon becomes stressed and asks Jae for help with choreography. Some of the other Islanders follow as well. Even without the representative role, he continues helping wherever he is needed. Jake refuses to slow down. If anything, he pushes himself harder than ever before, driven by how far he's already come and how close debut actually feels now. Over in the ground, the mood is heavier. The ground suggests Nikki should be their leader for the test. However, he resists this recommendation. He believes the safest path is to be practicing on his own, and that he can't spend time worrying about others. He worries that leadership will make him accountable for failure, using their past mistakes as evidence. Rain returns to the ground for a midpoint evaluation. He notices a major issue immediately, scolding the team for not having a clear leader and explaining how the lack of leadership is hurting their cohesion. Once the producers leave, the grounders sit quietly together, no one speaking first. They're only replaying everything they've just been told. What's coming up isn't just another evaluation, it could be the end for them. If they can't rise to what the system is asking of them, there may not be another chance. The possibility hangs over the room, with everyone feeling the tension of it. And so, after reflecting on the feedback, Nikki accepts the role anyway, choosing to help be responsible for the group, even if he might be uncomfortable at times. The deciding stage arrives quicker than they expected. They all try to show what they're capable of. The last thing they want is to regret that they could have shown more on stage. Following the performance, both the Islanders and the Grounders are feeling a different kind of pressure than before. The producers' votes consider every performance up to this point, but the global votes are something completely different. No matter how hard someone trained, no matter how reliable they were behind the scenes, it could all be meaningless if they failed to stand out to the viewers. Charisma, visibility, and emotional connection matter just as much as skill. Jake finds the idea of voting someone out overwhelming, knowing that whoever leaves is gone for good. Sunghoon feels it too. Voting was never easy, but now it's even more stressful. After spending more time together, they feel like they have significantly stronger bonds. The producers' evaluations follow. When Gonu is assessed, they point out that he hasn't stood out strongly as an individual. This leads him to unfortunately be voted out by the producers and sent to the ground. As he walks away, he's visibly upset, but he tries to stay composed, holding himself together as he leaves. At this point in time, those who were voted out by Islanders and by producers have one final chance to make it in the 12 of the next stage. Their fate is entirely dependent on their ranking with the global viewers. The 6 applicants currently promised to progress in Island are K, Heesung, Sunghoon, Jungwon, Jake, and Jae. Several of the excelling 6 have been in the island several weeks so far. It's clear they've earned their spots through their training. As for the 16 awaiting their fate, some of them have never even stepped foot in the island once. Meanwhile, some have tasted what the island is like. They're both equally desperate to be saved by the global viewers. The final results are revealed and the 12 to progress are confirmed. Sunu, Daniel, Nikki, Gonu, who was just recently eliminated, Taki, and Hanbin, who had never even been in the island up to this point. While it's an exciting moment for them, not everyone feels that way. Everyone understands that this stage of the journey is over for some of them. Their chances of continuing are completely gone now. As they all say their goodbyes, they feel different now. There's no talk of meeting again in the same space, no sense of another chance waiting just ahead. As the eliminated participants prepare to leave, their emotions get the best of them. They've worked so hard up to this point, and for so many of them, and can feel like they completely wasted their efforts. However, Kyungmin steps forward, trying to hold himself and the others together. He tells them,
이게 그냥 과정 중 하나라고 생각합시다.
his words stay with them as the door closes behind them forever. The 12 remaining applicants now enter the island. Part 2 introduces the final debut count, being 7 people. Those who rank highest will secure a debut position, and the applicants currently within the debut 7 wear a badge to mark that status. From this point on, every evaluation directly affects whether they stay inside the debut line or fall out of it, making the competition more visible and more unforgiving than before. Each person eliminated will be eliminated for good. The applicants then receive their next mission through a video. BTS appears just above where they're sitting now. The surprise alone is overwhelming to them. For a very brief moment, the heaviness of the goodbyes disappears. Earlier, the Islanders were asked to write down their concerns, not knowing who would be responding to them. Now, BTS begins addressing those questions one by one. Jae writes about his fear of humiliating moments and how he wants to avoid them. Jin responds by telling him to basically reframe that fear and to not take those moments so seriously. He encourages Jae to see them as experiences he'll one day laugh about. It's advice that stays with Jae for the rest of the show. Heesung's concern is different. He isn't focused on rankings, but on responsibility. He wonders what a good leadership looks like, especially when you're supporting the leader rather than being one. BTS actually praises his mindset, explaining that caring for others is what helps groups last. BTS introduces the next mission. The Islanders will perform BTS songs in units. By the time the video ends, the mood is shifted completely. The room is energized and excited. As the excitement settles down though, Islanders begin to notice the changes around them. The rooms have been reorganized and numbered, now corresponding to each individual's rank. The separation here is impossible to ignore. The room assigned to the top 3 ranked members is noticeably more comfortable and rewarding. Extra space, better conditions, it's a subtle difference, but very intentional. Among the others, quiet jealousy brews within them. The system is no longer just evaluating them, it's sorting them out. Preparation for part 2 begins. The teams were decided through a dance battle, which Taki won. As a reward, he got to either pick a teammate or pick a song. The 3 BTS songs assigned to the Islanders were I Need You, DNA, and Fake Love. Taki wanted to pick a teammate first, meaning that the other unit leaders grabbed the easiest songs before he could. As a result, Taki's team automatically receives Fake Love. The song's range is incredibly high, demanding both high levels of control and emotional restraint. Keeping pitch stable while maintaining intensity proves to be a challenge as they practice. Frustration builds within the team as they struggle to hold the song together consistently. When the midpoint evaluations arrive, the tension rises again. The feedback this time is noticeably stricter, reflecting how high the stakes have become. Son Sun-duk watches the Fake Love team closely and is openly dissatisfied. He describes their performance as awful, criticizing their lack of concentration and inability to keep the song cohesive. At this stage, struggling isn't unexpected, but failing to control isn't acceptable. If they can't fix this, the test could undo everything they've worked toward. As the rankings continue to loom in the background, Jake focuses on the fact that he's currently ranked 8th. Despite being praised for how quickly his skills have grown, the fact that he isn't in the debut 7 hits hard. He's visibly disappointed, but he doesn't let it slow him down. If anything, it makes him want to prove that he belongs in the debut lineup. The unit tests finally begin, with Team DNA going up first. Early on, the group struggled to communicate. Nikki added to that tension during preparation. He included an extra move that V performed in the original DNA choreography, trying to add his own flair to this performance. He doesn't tell his unit mates beforehand, and the move isn't part of the version they were given. When the others notice, they have to confront him. They disagreed about how the performance should be handled. Nikki believes it's an individual match, and that what matters most is how well he performs. However, the group views it completely differently, emphasizing how important it is for them to be consistent and cohesive. Nikki admits that while he respects K, the way they think is different, and a team-first mindset doesn't come naturally to him. However, by the midpoint evaluation, Nikki removes the ad-lib. Son Sung-duk tells him directly that standing out isn't worth it if it disrupts the team's performance. Team I Need You follows next. They're evidently very anxious going into it. At the midpoint, they struggle to match the emotional tone the producers were looking for, and even after the final performance, the producers feel like they haven't quite achieved the standard necessary for the song. Preparation for Fake Love is especially difficult. Taki struggles with the song's high range and receives heavy criticism during the midpoint evaluation. Even as the leader, he's visibly scared and unsure how to guide the team, especially knowing he's the only one without a debut badge. Heesung initially tries to trust Taki fully as leader, but as rehearsals grow harder, he starts stepping in, using his experience to support the team without taking control away from Taki. After the disappointing midpoint evaluation, Heesung personally comforts Taki, and by the performance, he's effectively helping stabilize the group. On stage, Heesung's performance stands out. Bang Si-hyuk later awards him the highest score of the day with 93 points. Sung-hoon is also noted for looking more relaxed, with his steady effort finally showing. Despite the struggles, Team Fake Love earns the highest average score and wins the mission. As a reward, Taki, Heesung, Sung-hoon, and Sunwoo are all exempt from elimination. As everyone receives their rankings, the atmosphere across Island grows tense. Everyone waits in silence, fully aware that eliminations are no longer temporary. The results unfold differently than could have been expected. Because Team Fake Love was exempt from elimination, Taki, who ends up ranking 12th overall, is just barely saved. However, that exemption has a consequence on the others. Rank 11, who would normally be safe, is now automatically eliminated. Daniel and Gonu are the last two left standing on stage. However, Daniel is revealed to have ranked 10th, allowing him to return to Island. Thus Gonu, who ranks 11th, is eliminated from Island entirely. It's an incredibly emotional moment. Even though they're competitors, they've spent enough time together to form real bonds. The two share a long hug, knowing it's their final moment together in the competition. As Daniel walks back alone, Gonu's elimination is finalized, and he leaves for good.
진짜 미안해요. 진짜 미안해요.
아니야.
진짜 보고 싶었거든요.
아련 파이팅! 파이팅!
Even after so many eliminations, they're equally as painful. Even survival doesn't feel like a victory when it comes at the cost of someone else leaving forever. With the group reduced once again, the system of Island continues to move forward. The next test is introduced. Rather than focusing on technical performance alone, Part 2's second test centers on chemistry, both between the contestants themselves and with the global audience watching them. The remaining participants are divided into 2 units and are assigned 2 original songs, Flicker and Dive Into You. Unlike earlier rounds, eliminations this time will be decided entirely by global votes. Because he ranked first in the BTS unit test, Heesung is given an individual reward. He's allowed to choose which song he wants to perform and select the members for his team. As Heesung begins choosing his team, the room grows tense. Sung-hoon hopes to be picked and is relieved when he's chosen first for Flicker. Jae wants to be picked, believing it would signal to himself that he's seen as skilled and reliable. However, when Heesung doesn't choose him, the disappointment hits him hard. Jae feels abandoned, even if he doesn't say it at the moment. Those who are chosen feel relieved. Those who aren't feel the opposite. Being left out stings, especially in a test meant to measure chemistry and appeal. Jae automatically joins Dive Into You and volunteers to take on the role of leader. He focuses on assigning parts based on what he thinks each member can handle best. He approaches leadership with intensity, openly saying that he believes he has to maintain an ambitious mindset, always aiming for first place. The producers also introduce an additional incentive. After the performances, one contestant will be selected as the best overall. That contestant's global votes from the final 24 hours will be doubled. The rule immediately changes how everyone approaches the test. Standing out now matters as much as blending in. The Dive Into You team channels their disappointment into motivation. Rather than dwelling on not being picked, they decide to use it as their fuel. If chemistry is what the test demands, they want to prove it through effort and unity. At the same time, the top 3 ranked contestants, Heesung, Jungwon, and Sung-hoon, are rewarded for their previous performance. They're taken out briefly, given small moments of normalcy through a dog cafe, virtual reality games, ice skating, and shopping. While they're out, they buy gifts for the others back at Island. When the group receives them, it helps ease some of the tension. Even if they aren't in the top 3, they're reminded that they still matter to the team. When Sunwoo's arm strength is criticized during the midpoint evaluation, Jay has the entire team do push-ups together, hoping to improve their strength for the worm move. Instead of just leaving Sunwoo to improve on his own, they all work on his weak point together. While Dive Into You is handling their teamwork well, Team Flicker runs into deeper issues. They're struggling with communication, especially around K. Both Heesung and Jungwon feel uneasy speaking honestly around him. Jungwon, despite having been saved by K before, feels he needs to be careful and can't be fully open. Heesung also feels that K's leadership is too strict and direct, making it hard to communicate comfortably. Eventually, the members decide to address it directly. The conversation is tense and uncomfortable. They explain how difficult it's been to work together openly. K listens, but the weight of the discussion overwhelms him, and he has to leave the room. Afterward though, something shifts within the group. With everything finally being said, the team regroups. Sunghoon reflects that being honest is necessary for a good team, especially when people are struggling but staying silent. Later, when Flicker takes the stage, there's an immediate difference from the midpoint. Their performance is focused and unified and emotionally controlled. The producers respond with praise, recognizing how much stronger the team became once the tension was addressed. Following the performances, they announce the results. Surprisingly, Jake is selected as the best individual of the chemistry test. Even though he's trained for the least amount of time, would the double votes be enough to spare him from elimination? Who could be eliminated instead? They move into a mini-mission connected to 17. This time, teams are assigned instead of chosen. The Islanders prepare 17 choreographies and perform them for the members themselves. When several of the 17 members arrive, they greet the trainees warmly, easing the tension they have. Rather than pushing them harshly, they focus on encouraging them. Dino praises both teams, but notes that Pretty You stands out the most, which feels especially motivating coming from artists they admire. Sunwoo clearly shines in Pretty You. He's wanted to show a brighter, more cheerful side of himself, and the concept comes naturally to him. Because of that, 17 chooses Sunwoo as the standout of the mini-mission, leaving him visibly happy and encouraged. After the mission, the Islanders are taken outside and shown something they didn't expect. Video messages from global viewers begin to play. Fans from around the world speak directly to them, offering encouragement and support. For many of the members, it's the first time they truly feel seen beyond the competition. They aren't just trainees being evaluated anymore. People are watching them, caring about them, and rooting for them. They're also given notebooks filled with fan letters and artwork. The messages are very personal and sincere, thanking them for their effort and telling them to keep going. In a process that constantly reminds them how replaceable they are, the letters do the opposite. They remind the Islanders that what they're doing matters to someone. After receiving the fan messages, the show moves directly into the next major evaluation. Earlier, the third test of Part 2 was announced, this time focused on concepts. The 17 mini-mission was used to determine the teams for the concept test. Because Sunwoo placed first, he's given the right to choose both his song and the members he wants to perform with. He selects Chamber 5, or Dream of Dreams, a lighter, more refreshing concept, and chooses Heesung, Jungwon, Jake, Sunghoon, and Taki to join him. The remaining contestants are assigned Flame On, a performance centered on intensity and power. This test places less emphasis on technical difficulty and more on whether each applicant can fully embody the concept. After the performances, the producers will eliminate one participant based on individual scoring. However, one applicant will also be eliminated by global viewers halfway through their practices. Someone very well could have to switch teams. As preparations continue, they discuss leadership. Kay is recommended as a leader, but declines, feeling that he shouldn't take on that role again after the previous issues. Instead, he recommends Sunghoon, who agrees to try and lead this time. Kay is also suggested for Part 1, but he hesitates, believing it might suit Hanbin better. Although he pushes back, he ultimately takes the part anyway, showing that he's losing a bit of his confidence and becoming uncertain after past events. The teams arrive at the midpoint evaluation. Son Sung-duk watches the Dream of Dreams team closely and feels the performance comes across as awkward. While the concept itself is clear, the members struggle to appear fully comfortable within it. In contrast though, Sungdeok is visibly impressed by the Flame-On team. The performance feels sharp and committed, with confidence that stands out immediately. At the same time, the global rankings begin weighing heavily on everyone's minds. The producers reveal where the Islanders are currently standing in the global vote prior to its conclusion. Jay waits anxiously for his standing, only to see himself ranked 11th, directly in the elimination zone. Although the voting isn't finished yet, he assumes the worst. He's certain that he'll be eliminated, beginning to practice off to the side, helping the team more as a support rather than as a member who expects to stay. He even writes individual letters to the other Islanders, wanting to leave them with something meaningful.
왜? 응? 그냥 말하고 싶은 얘기. 에이야. 그런 거 하지 말라고. 괜찮아. 진짜 괜찮아.
When the final global votes are revealed, there's a drastic shift. Jay jumps from 11th all the way up to 3rd place. He's ecstatic and stunned by how dramatically his position has changed. He's relieved to still be standing. Not everyone is spared though. Taki, who had hoped to show more of himself during Dive Into You, places last in the global vote and is eliminated from I-LAND. Bang Shi-hyuk speaks to him directly, acknowledging how young he is and how far he's come already. He encourages Taki not to be too hard on himself, reminding him that he's done well and that his dream is still achievable if he keeps going. Taki's been back and forth between I-LAND and ground. He's jumped around the rankings constantly. However, he still gave it all he had. He never once let his determination falter, and while he can't continue with Nikki or Kay anymore, he understands that it isn't the end yet. Just because he couldn't debut now, doesn't mean he never will. The loss hits everyone hard. Kay in particular is devastated. Taki had always been there with him. Sometimes Taki was in the island, sometimes he was in the ground, but there was always the possibility of seeing him again. This time, that possibility is gone. Kay feels like he failed him as an older brother. Even though everyone is crushed after his elimination, they need to continue practicing for the next mission. The system doesn't stop for their needs. It's constantly moving and demanding more. The Islanders must follow exactly what it wants, without issue. With Taki eliminated, they need to adjust their teams. Sunwoo is given the choice to fill the empty spot in Dream of Dreams, and he chooses Sunghoon. He believes Sunghoon can show a wide range of charms and fit the song well. He also trusts Sunghoon's work ethic, confident that he can adapt quickly despite the limited time. However, Sunghoon's move leaves Team Flame On without a leader. With that role suddenly vacant, Kay is nominated once again. This time, however, he accepts it. He promises to do better, to support the team more openly, and to lead with care rather than pressure. As rehearsals continue, there's a noticeable change. Kay has become more encouraging and attentive. Nikki notices it too, openly acknowledging how supportive Kay has become. Jay also shares that having Kay as a leader feels reassuring, describing him as a reliable older brother. Though Kay still carries guilt over Taki, he doesn't let it stop him from supporting the others. Practice intensifies across both the teams. Hee-sung pushes everyone to keep working. However, Jungwon is having some trouble while preparing. He's worried that he doesn't have a debut badge and may not make it back into the debut 7. Nikki feels something similar. He's never been in the debut 7 before. He's worried about not only proving himself, but actually surviving long enough to make the cut. Hanbin also pushes himself harder. He's wanting to appear cooler on stage, as Sungdeok advised, so he trains closely with Nikki to improve his performance. Even though Nikki's had some issues in the past, the other Islanders still depend on him. He's still someone that they can look to when they need help. When the real performance finally arrives, the nerves are still there, but they're different now. The applicants have been through too much for the fear to feel the same as it did at the start. After Team Flame On performs, Bang Shi-hyuk praises them directly. He says the performance felt professional, noting that it no longer looked like trainees on a survival show, but performers who already understood the stage. He sums it up simply, saying that it's a performance the way it should be. He also points out Nikki's jacket off move, praising it as a memorable moment that showed presence on stage and not just technique. When the rankings are revealed, the results are surprising. Nikki ranks 2nd overall, marking the first time he's ever been in the debut 7. For someone who struggled with insecurity and teamwork early on, it's an interesting shift to see. Not everyone can make it through though. Someone still has to be eliminated. The one Nikki tried to help, Hanbin, is eliminated. Even as he leaves, he tries to keep smiling, despite being heartbroken inside. Strangely, the others seem to take it harder than he does. Anbin tries to look back on his time in I-LAND with gratitude, saying he'll never forget what he learned there, and even calling it the most memorable moment of his life. I-LAND is now down to 9 people. 2 more must be eliminated before debut. To decide the final 7, the remaining Islanders will perform in a live finale episode. Global viewers will vote for 6 of the 7 debut members, and out of the remaining 3, the producers will choose 1 final member. If someone failed to stand out to the viewers before, it could very well be over now. The live finale arrives with the Islanders feeling levels of anxiousness they've never felt before. It's the final day of I-LAND, and it's the one that determines their future. Will they debut, or will they fail? However, the eliminated Islanders are revealed to be returning for a special stage. All 22 applicants reunited for one final performance of Into the Island. The moment feels unreal to everyone. The remaining Islanders are visibly excited, overwhelmed by the chance to stand together again as a full group. For many of them, it feels like a dream, a brief return to the beginning before everything changed. After the stage, the 9 remaining members gather for the group name announcement, ENHYPEN. It's meant to represent connection, both between the members and with the world. For many of them, this is when it truly sinks in. I-LAND, the place that shaped them, is ending. The mood is bittersweet. There's excitement for what comes next, but also some sadness about leaving this chapter behind. BTS attends the live finale. A few of them give the Islanders some advice and encouragement before they're presented with their fates. J-Hope reminds them not to lose their passion or their aspirations for performing, encouraging them to protect that drive as they move forward. Jimin tells them to love their fellow members, emphasizing how important those relationships will be once the cameras are gone. He also reminds them of something else. Debut isn't the end goal. Debuting doesn't mean you've achieved everything. It's only the beginning. As the finale continues, the global fan vote rankings are revealed slowly, stretching the tension as much as it can. It's easy to see how stressed they are at this point. They've spent 113 days in I-LAND. They've trained together, argued, supported one another, and pushed themselves to meet the standards that the system demanded. Now their future depends almost entirely on how they were perceived by viewers. Bang Si-hyuk too reminds them not to forget their original dream, and not to forget the fans who helped them come this far. The top 6 are announced one by one. Jungwon is announced as first place in the global vote. He once worried that he'd even be able to be inside of the debut 7, and now he's ranked at the top of it. He admits that being ranked low repeatedly throughout the show was mentally difficult, and that being placed first in the finale makes him deeply thankful to those who believed in him. Jay is praised for his energy during the live performance. The humiliation, resentment, and anger he struggled with early on no longer defines him. Instead, his growth resonated with viewers. He ranks 2nd overall. He describes the moment as feeling like a dream, saying that realizing his dream is finally coming true is deeply meaningful to him. As the announcements continue, the tension only grows for those left unnamed. The top 6 have been called out already. It's now dependent on the producer's decision. Kay, Sunwoo, and Daniel look like they could break down at any given moment. They're torn. Their minds are immediately going to the worst outcome possible. And when Sunwoo's name is finally called, Kay and Daniel immediately rush to congratulate him, despite not being selected themselves. Even in their own disappointment, they try to show up for someone else's success. The producers recognize Sunwoo's strong potential as a global idol and the impact he has on fans. Sunwoo appears heavily conflicted, knowing that by the producers choosing him, he needs to leave Kay and Daniel behind. With Sunwoo being selected, Kay and Daniel are automatically eliminated. Despite Kay repeatedly placing high when producers evaluated him, he struggled to connect with global viewers. He's visibly broken by the outcome and struggles to find the words he wants to say. Even so, he promises to continue working hard so that one day he can stand alongside ENHYPEN. Daniel is clearly upset too, but expresses gratitude for his time on I-LAND and promises to keep practicing and improving. I-LAND never let them move as one group. It kept breaking them apart, rearranging them, and reminding them that only a few would make it through. They weren't fighting to protect a specific team, they were fighting to stay visible long enough to exist at all. Over time, they learned how to adapt to that reality, how to step forward as a leader when they had to, how to support someone without knowing if they'd even still be there tomorrow, how to keep going even when the system made everything feel temporary. By the finale, they don't feel like they've won. They just feel relieved to have made it through. For the first time, the people still standing know they won't be asked to leave tomorrow. Debut doesn't mean they figured everything out, or that the process made sense in the end. It just means they finally made it to the next chapter they dreamt of so much. They've proved they're people who can't just be disposed of anymore, and only then do they get the chance to learn how to be a team. They first had to connect with each other and look out for one another to make it out of the island. If you want to see what Stray Kids Survival Show is like, something that begins by emphasizing a single team's power, you can click the video on screen. Thanks for watching! Bye 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 bye.